Hey Mary, I really appreciate you just posting your thoughts there and struggling with them so openly. Because I was obviously struggling in my videos about this as well, and it's good to just let the creative process happen. And you brought up synesthesia, and it made me think that yeah, that's why we can't separate the redness from the shape of the apple, because the object apple is a synthesis of redness and roundness. And you know our brain relates these two quite naturally, um, but we assume in this old paradigm that separates the primary and secondary qualities, or the objective and subjective qualities, we assume that the redness and the shape of the apple are somehow separate before our brain perceptually adds them together into a single object. But that does neglect the apple itself. There is an apple, and it's interesting that we kind of, by separating the subject from the object so sharply, we're basically saying that there is no apple but in our brains. And it doesn't it doesn't seem to do justice to the autonomy of the apple or anything else that we see in the world, to say that it is our mind, our individual mind, that somehow, I don't know, floating in the brain matter within our skull is what's giving everything its quality in the world. I mean, not just apples, but think about other people. If there is this sharp divide between subject and object, and that this subject in here, this separate Cartesian mind that just is bound within the skull, if all it has knowledge-wise about the world is coming through its senses, and that the senses are obviously very not only limited but separate. There's different streams. There's the light coming into my eyes, and then sound through my ears, and the tactile sensation through my skin, and the smells and the tastes. If I have to construct from that a world independently from what it is out there, when I talk to a person, I'm not talking to them, I'm talking to my own construction. So it's very solipsistic, it's very isolated. Our mind is not ever seeing the world, it's seeing its own virtual projection of that world. And that's the picture of the human being that we've been living with for the past few hundred years. And you can understand why we're so isolated from each other and from nature, from the cosmos. It's a direct result of this metaphysics that separates us off from the world. And they some other non-Western cultures, like especially in the East or Buddhism, they'll talk about the mind as the sixth sense. And I think it's important to recognize this, that uh, in a sense we feel the presence of others prior to having to construct or deduce by way of our individual senses who or what they are, or what their mood is, or what have you. If someone is anxious or uncomfortable in our presence, we know it without even having to rationalize it or think it over based on various cues and their facial expressions or posture or whatever. You can feel it immediately. Um, if someone on the street is angry at you because they asked you a question but you didn't hear, and you walk by and they jump in front of you and start yelling, you don't have to stop and think, oh, he's angry. No, no, you immediately experience their anger. It penetrates you, before you can even think. It's in you. And I think the same goes for your emotions. When you approach somebody, when you're happy or you're sad or angry, whatever it is, you are penetrating them, and they feel with you immediately, and it's that sixth sense that's connecting us. Um, I don't want to say on an immaterial level, but it's not through the senses. It's not as though you have to derive this information through some type of abstract perceptual reasoning. It's immediately felt, um, and in a sense, going back to the apple, um, you mentioned that it absorbs all the other colors in the spectrum and reflects the redness that we see. So, in one sense, we're seeing everything the apple is not. If what it is what it absorbs, so it kind of um, it's a reverse of what I've been saying, that we can actually reach out and know the world for what it is, independent of our senses. But it just shows that the apple has its autonomy. It's an object independent of our act of abstraction, of labeling it an apple. It exists in itself, and it shows us its existence only through reflection, through what it does not absorb for itself. Um, and let's move away from the apple and say another person. We see what they are not, and they see what we are not. But in that emptiness of seeing what they are not, it's just space to fill in the lack with that sixth sense, maybe with that sense of feeling one another directly. It's not something that you see through the senses as a reflection, but it's what's already present in you. It's what allows you to see their reflection in the first place. Um, it's getting pretty abstract, huh? Well, I guess that's it. But please continue struggling with these ideas with me, because it's through this type of interaction that we solve the problem. But I don't even want to consider it a problem. We're trying to shift out of this old thought space of separating subject and object and me from you, and we're trying to find a new way, a new ontology that's based in relationship rather than dichotomy. And the only way to do it is by building relations, by communicating. So let's continue.